What's going on, everybody? AJ here with the Blue to Green podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. My sincerest apologies to everybody for not getting more content out earlier and not getting this particular episode out sooner. Been sitting on it for a month. So my apologies to Travis and Emily Gribble, who came and sat down and gave me their time, and I've been sitting on it because summer's been hectic. My apologies. With that being said, I sit down and talk with Travis Gribble, who is a retired police officer out of the city of Mesa and a former SWAT operator as well. And we discuss his journey through mental health trauma, mental health diagnosis, and mental health post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. And we talk about the organization that he formed in hopes of destigmatizing the conversation regarding what first responders go through and making it a normal thing and part of the academy day one. Alongside with him is his wife, Emily, who she's also a former Mesa police officer, and she gives her side and her perspective about what it's like to go through with somebody, loving someone who's going through mental health issues that just needs a little bit of help and support and to find the right tools. So together they give some good tools and tips and tricks and all that to understand what's going on, what the person in the treatment is going through. We talk about culturally competent therapists, and his mission is now to start talking about all this stuff. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. If you get anything out of this, please like, comment, and subscribe to help also share Travis's message. And one last thing, I was kind of in a rush when I set up my cameras due to timing and all that. And there's this weird flippy thing with my sign behind me, and I hope it's not too distracting. I just apologize. I'm trying to bring you the best possible content, and shit like that happens and it just pisses me off. Enough about me, enough about that. Let's hear Travis and Emily's story. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Queen Creek
you starting to lose stuff.
7.
All right, he threw some things out of the car right there. He's throwing some things out the passenger side. They're along the wall, the slow lane wall. 619, he's throwing dope out the window. We got bills and marijuana coming out.
619, I copy bills
It is
and
your
marijuana
stick.
coming out of the window at 2328.
Travis and Emily, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If you guys, we'll dive into your histories in just a minute. I'm literally overwhelmed and overjoyed that you guys said yes to come on. Thank you so much. I know you guys probably have a very, very cramped schedule and being here in town, but we have connected online for probably the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's been about that, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And we do the same thing in different ways, but it's definitely your mission. Right. Whereas it's just a component to what I do, and that's talking about law enforcement and mental health. So I want to shut up for just a minute, and I want you guys to just give a background and introduction as to who you all are.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go first. Travis Gribble did 24 years in law enforcement total. About 11 years of that was in Michigan.
Okay.
And then I lateraled across the country to Mesa, Arizona in 2008. That's about when the whole out-of-state lateral thing was kind of becoming a thing. It was very new because of recruiting, so they were trying to reach out as far as they could. So made the trip with my family to Arizona, and just enjoyed it. I was always looking for a big city. The place that I worked in Michigan was a very small sheriff's department, so 15 people maybe on the road when I left.
Okay.
So, but I'd always had that itch to like, hey, I want to go work big city police stuff. Had the itch for SWAT because I did SWAT back in Michigan, but it was more, a regional team. We hardly had any call outs, that kind of stuff. But I was very interested in it. So I wanted to get to a place where I could, hopefully, have a chance or have a shot to put in for a team like that in Mesa. And so I made the trip and, came across the country to Arizona.
Nice.
And finished out my career there. I retired in March of 2022.
Okay.
So
you worked from Mesa from 08 to 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And Emily, what's your background in law enforcement?
I was a police officer for 15 years.
Sound perfect.
Okay, good.
I know you're a little. No, you sound. That's perfect.
This is Emily's first time, so she's gonna.
Cool. Great. I was with the Seattle Police Department for 9 years.
Okay.
And then I came to Mesa PD in 2016, and then I left in 2022.
What brought you from Seattle to Mesa?
The really awesomely horrible relationship I was in at the time. Blessing in disguise. Because Travis is my silver lining to that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you both met.
Yeah, Mesa.
Yep.
Mesa PD.
On the job.
That is a blessing and a curse.
For sure.
It is, yeah. No, I definitely, before I met her, I would have told anyone, like, don't get mixed up with someone you work with.
Don't dimp your pen and company ink.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But
Lift that up a little bit higher towards you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. But, you know, it is what it is. And it actually really worked because she has a very strong personality. And then when I was going through my darkest days, you know, we're obviously going to talk about some of the mental health stuff that I've, you know, been through and what I do now. But it was definitely a great resource because she knew the job. She could see things that were going on with me. And I don't know if I would have had that with someone, you know, a partner that was not in law enforcement.
Right.
So, yeah, it works sometimes. Sometimes it's tragic. So you just never know. It's a roll of the dice. But we have many good friends that, you know, they built relationships with someone they work with, and it's been great. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
How did you keep it, you know, separate from just talking about the job? That had to have been a component to keep you guys sane.
Yeah. She is much better about that.
Okay.
She was, you know, when I do my presentations, I oftentimes will mention if we could clone Emily to where, you know, she bust ass on the job, you know, while she's on the clock. But then she knows as soon as she leaves, like, hey, I'm on my time.
Gotcha.
I'm going to go home and take care of myself. I'm going to do things, have hobbies and all that. But you know, the SWAT world, it's very hard to leave it even when you're off the clock per se. Are you really ever off the clock? Yeah, it's not. Even, you know, with Mesa, you know, we would be on standby every 3 weeks, but inevitably you were on standby all the time.
Sure.
Because they just needed people. You know, people are taking vacations, people are sick, people are injured, whatever it is. And then even when you're not on standby, you're carrying around your work phone because if the team gets called out, if I'm available, I'm not going to sit at home while stuff's going on. I just wouldn't do that. So it's very hard to separate in a position like that.
No.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's funny because we used to joke around because when I first met him, I met him after, I don't know if we're going to talk about Ruby or his big incident call that kind of what he talks about for his mental health stuff. I met him after that incident. So I didn't have anything to compare it to like, oh, this was Travis before this really shitty call. Like I met him after this shitty call. And I would always joke, I'm like, wow, you really live to work. Like you are working. I'm like, I work to live. I love being a cop, but I like my hobbies. I like my personal life. But then learning about through our therapists and stuff, how that overworking was part of his trauma response. I'm like, oh shit. Like, okay, now it makes sense. But cause I'm always like, you're not even on standby. Why are you responding? Why are you looking at the phone? Like this is our time off. And it's funny because I would like, he has FOMO, like fear of missing out. I have JOMO. I have joy of missing out. Like I don't want, I'm home, leave me alone. Like I'm okay. Oh, you got it? Cool. So
I like that.
That was hard to get used to. I'm like, why are you so into work? Like spun up all the time,
Right.
all the time, but not knowing of the dark stuff that he was dealing with until, you know, he hit the wall and then we're like, all right, we're handling this now.
Personal observation,
Yeah.
I think females are better at separating the job. Every female cop that I have known, it's their hobby. All the job does is fund their hobby.
Right.
That's like most of the female cops actually, when I stop and think about it, is that you guys are, you know, just, okay, I did my job, now I'm going to go home. But us dudes don't turn it off. And then especially, I mean, you all knows that you get into that cop mentality where, especially when you're in the tack world and you have to have the latest and greatest and, you know, spray paint it black and call it mil spec and we're going to buy it. You know,
I call it they flex their nuts. I'm like, you guys are flexing your nuts. No one really cares. Like your drop holsters and molly gear. Cool. Like put it away.
Yep. So nothing's changed.
So
Nothing's changed. Yeah.
Gotcha.
No, and it is. And what she's bringing up, that's one of the biggest points that it was coping for me. Because if I'm at home and things are slowing down, the mind starts spinning up and I'm dealing with shit that I really don't want to remember. So if I'm going 100 miles an hour at work, having to make decisions, quick decisions in the moment, I'm thinking I'm keeping that shit at bay, but really I'm just piling more and more stuff up.
So you're just compartmentalizing all of
Yeah,
it.
for sure. And it's just not good. But that's an easy thing, especially in the SWAT environment. Well, even, I mean, I would say that nowadays, you know, with all the departments, you know, there's always overtime available. There's off-duty jobs. Everyone's trying to get the next best assignment. So you got to be going, you know, and it's very easy to fall in that trap and it gets rewarded, quite honestly, at work. The people that are the company people that go, what do we see? They rise to the top quicker than anybody else. should we maybe change that program to where we're rewarding people that are placing value on their personal time, their family, their mental health, and kind of reverse it? Because the way we're doing it right now is not working.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do, when you're part of the team and you're in that type A personality type people, what do you think about that person that values their time?
Hey, I was one of the worst people that came out against that. I would have guys coming up under me, and if they wouldn't respond to a call out, it's like, why didn't you answer your phone?
Yep.
What's going on? I look back with regret on that, because I'm like, they were doing it right. They were setting the boundaries, saying, no, this is my weekend off. I'm with my wife and kids. I'm going to make them the priority. I'm not coming for this call out. The problem always was we never had enough people. So always going back in your mind is like, oh, if I don't go, I know these people are off. The team's going to be short. Well, that shouldn't be our responsibility. It should be the organization to make sure that everyone's fully staffed and there's not that pressure on you to have to fill that void when you should be taking care of your personal life and not having to be there on the job. So, yeah.
With what's going on in today's day and age, though, like I know the department that I used to work for, their team is tiny now because they can't get people. So unfortunately, we're kind of the dinosaurs, you know, in the old school mentality.
For sure.
The new school mentality, I would say, definitely is much more. My 40 hours is my 40 hours,
Agreed.
And that's it.
Yep.
You know, they're fuck off. I'm not answering the call, which is good, but it pisses supervisors off, and it, you know, it upsets the team and everything else.
Yeah, and I see that across the country. And it's not, I don't want to just focus on SWAT. It's any specialty unit. Everybody's hurting, because what we're seeing as we travel across the country and meet with organizations, the number one thing they have to do is put butts in the seats of patrol cars.
Yeah.
That's the, you know, they got to be able to answer calls. And if they can't do that, then they got to start pulling bodies, or, you know, like, you know, the team where I was in the Valley. Yeah. If we're short on patrol and someone leaves SWAT, they're not filling that position.
Right.
And so after 5 or 6 years, you're like, holy shit, we used to have 10 more people. And now we're still doing the same amount of operations, if not more, with less. And it's driving people into the ground. I see it every day. So,
well, and you mentioned two things. We'll talk about what your organization is, but one of the things, though, too, is that people don't understand the whole defund the police, defund this, defund that. Well, they don't comprehend the fact that the road patrol, whatever you want to call it, for I have a very mixed bag of listeners.
Yeah.
So some of them won't have any idea. But the patrol guys, you know, the ones in uniform that are answering the calls and all that, that's the priority of any police department.
Right.
Yes.
When you defund, and now you have to take detectives that are doing child crimes, that are doing robberies, that are doing homicides, and stick them back in uniform and put them back out on the road. One, they haven't been in patrol in God only knows how long. And two, those crimes aren't getting solved.
Right.
Those things aren't being investigated.
Right.
So it serves no purpose to. I'm very much of the Jocko mindset.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Of adding. It needs to be 80% more people. You know, 20% in training, 20% doing this, 20% doing that.
Right.
But that's not the reality we live in, unfortunately, right now.
No, it's not. I mean, yeah, you bring up the big word, training. You know, because, okay, if we go to that, you know, whatever the defund the police, whatever their motivation is, okay, they're not doing the right thing. They're not taking the right action. You know, they're going to lethal force too soon. Well, how do we correct any of that or look at it, right? It's training. Like I remember, what was it? Was Jocko on Rogan or something? They were talking about how much everyone should be a purple belt.
Yeah.
Love it.
Right.
But I'm laughing because, like, you guys don't understand how hard it is to even get, 10 hours of training a month or 5 hour, whatever it is. It is like, you're just fighting for it all the time. And we need to increase, positions tenfold to be able to do all that, make sure people are getting the appropriate training, all that stuff. But right now, everyone's fighting for bodies. It's unbelievable.
I think the only one that's not fighting for bodies is Pinal County Sheriff's Office.
Is it?
Yeah. And I'm being very serious about that.
Yep.
I have a wonderful relationship with the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. Yeah. And drive through Pinal County, like going, Jesus, do these guys ever go home? They're fucking everywhere.
Right.
But the staffing everywhere is just terrible right now.
And, I obviously, I'm friends with guys from Pinal, and they obviously like the leadership right now.
Yes.
What is amazing, like I would tell any person that's new in law enforcement or thinking about it, it is an amazing time because you can literally go throughout the whole country, look at an organization, how it's run, how it's supported, and be like, that's where I want to go.
Yep.
Versus when I was starting in 1996, there'd be one position open and 1,200 people would be going for it. And you were just begging, somebody give me a job. Now you can sit back and be like, oh, I want to go work for that person, you know, which is, it's an amazing, if you're getting this line of work, like you can be, you know, you can pick the place where you want to spend your career, which is, it's kind of a unique thing.
Emily, what got you interested in law enforcement?
My dad was a police officer.
Okay.
And my older brother was a police officer for 5 years until he went back to school and became a doctor. So I've always wanted to be a cop since I was a kid.
Yeah, you grew up around it. Mm-hmm. So your dad was a superhero, I'm sure.
Yep, he would come home with like fingerprint kits or these like old flip books where you could different noses and eyes, and like we would try to make faces of, because it was just crazy old school stuff. Now it's probably very antiquated, but so yeah, I've always wanted to be a cop since I was a kid.
And did you grow up in Seattle?
I grew up in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad was a cop in Akron, Ohio, and that's where my brother was a cop too.
Okay.
And then after college, I applied for Akron Police Department, but again, like back in those days, it was limited jobs available, hundreds of people coming out to test for it. So I tested, and then it was like months later, I'm like, I haven't even got the results yet. I was like, Seattle's hiring. I loved watching Grey's Anatomy in college. Like, I wanted to work for a bigger, busy city. I was like, cool. I applied. My parents are like, Seattle, Washington? Like, what? I'm like, why not? Let's see what happens. I'd rather go and hate it than not try and always wonder. And I loved it.
Yeah, that must have been a totally different style of policing in Seattle versus Mesa.
Oh, everything's different. Everything's different.
I visited Seattle one time, but I've never stayed there for any amount of time. So.
But you know, it's interesting. She's got good stories, though. Even obviously, Seattle's always been a liberal city.
Yes.
Prior to, what do you say, usually like the 2015 Michael Brown incident where things started really changing?
There's always protests in the summer, especially in Seattle, for planned ones all the time there are. But yeah, once different police shootings started happening and stuff, and it just started getting crazy. But I left in 2016, so in 2020, when all the George Floyd stuff changed everything in that city drastically, not for the better.
Mm-hmm.
What year did you enter law enforcement?
2007.
Okay, so yeah, I got in 07 as well. 06, 07, yeah, so same time period.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And what was cool about meeting the Seattle people is a little bit different than here. Is it was a real traditional police department. Like
it is.
Pipes and drums, the culture, the history, just very, very big city PD. And I liked it. You know, people that we've got to know, or I've got to know through her, it's different than kind of the Valley where there's not as much history and stuff. But yeah, after all that stuff, I mean, I remember one of her old partners, he left and took, what was it, like a $25 an hour pay cut to go to a smaller PD in Washington because he's like, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
Like,
the money's not worth it for them anymore. I don't care. They're like,
support.
I don't care how much you pay me. It's still shit.
No.
It sucks to work for the city right now.
Yeah. So, which is
But
sad.
it was department-wide camaraderie up in Seattle because, like I said, every summer there was a big protest. You know, you're getting shit thrown at you, rocks, all so all of us are like, all right, we're all in this shit together. Here in Mesa, it's pretty pro-cop compared to Seattle anywhere is, but so it was like, okay, you had your little units that you worked with and you enjoyed your squads, but like in Seattle was this literally palpable department-wide camaraderie, which was really cool.
That's interesting.
That was really cool.
Yeah. That's very, I never had that experience, unfortunately.
And I was on pipes and drums, and that was just pure fun.
What is pipes and drums?
With the bagpipes and the drums, like we had our own band, and I can't remember what year it started. I want to say like around 2012, but we had the Boston Police Department, their pipes and drums, which is like world renowned. They came and like mentored us and taught us. So, oh gosh, get the old school Boston cops coming into Seattle. We're like, oh shit, we're all gonna get in trouble. It was a blast. It was so much fun working in that city.
When I think of camaraderie, I do think of Boston PD or Philly. Unfortunately, there's like some corruption issues on the back east departments.
Yeah.
Minor
like,
detail.
Right. But as far as like the the PBAs and the benevolent associations and that camaraderie, I always think back east. I always think the not even New York City, but Boston particularly. So, and I've seen The Wire, so that makes me qualified to talk about that.
all you
Talk
need to
about
know.
Boston. But so moving forward, so you guys left Mesa. You retired from Mesa PD in 2022.
I did.
And you left Mesa.
Correct.
With him. Were you guys married at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So that kind of moves us into what you guys are doing now. And if you wouldn't mind talking about what happened at Mesa in your mission and what we're doing here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I retired in 2022 with a post-traumatic stress injury retirement. You know, it's very easy for me to reflect in the rearview mirror now, what my career did to me, but I can see stuff all the way back from the beginning, shooting, the shootings that I was in, the cumulative effect of the everyday trauma was just building up. And just as much as our culture does not support traditionally coming forward for help. It's just, I often say this in my presentations, you can have, especially the bigger departments, they have, you go to any of them, they probably have peer, they probably have some sort of what they would say, yeah, we support our people, they're in their mental health. But what we always watch as the boots on the grounds is like, what's going on behind closed doors? How is that person treated when they come forward for help? Are we, accepting? Does that mean it's career suicide for them? Where will they go from there? And that's what everyone really watches. So in general, our culture is not good. And that's been pretty much my entire career. I had a pretty significant call. I call it my career call. And this doesn't have to be, for anyone. I never want them to compare their circumstances to mine. Because some people say, and Emily already mentioned it, this little girl, Ruby, we found her, that she had been used in a sex trafficking thing. In 2016, it was actually my very first day as a patrol sergeant in the STEP training program, and I was the one that found her in the closet. And that the department, to be quite honest with you, they just weren't prepared because there wasn't anything really in policy, like how do we take care of our people, and so things were missed. My ownership completely is that I put the career above everything else. I knew that had pushed me to a point that was not good. And so I started coping negatively and kept going until my final call was a hostage rescue that we were going in on, and it turned out to be a recovery. I thought I was going in to put the suspect down and save everybody else, and we found everyone dead inside, and that was my very last call in my career. And that was my breaking point. So I go through do all the things. I'm off work. I finally went and saw somebody because through Emily's unit, she did a lot of interconnect crimes against children, and her unit at Mesa was seeing this therapist through Public Safety Crisis Solutions in Phoenix. And she had planted the seed a while ago saying, hey, you need to go see this person. Everyone seems to like her. I had a very bad experience with a therapist that I found through Mesa PD. Okay. I wasn't honest about why I was going. I lied and said, oh, it's because I've been through a divorce and I'm having child custody issues. I just need to go see someone. They're like, hey, yeah, here, Travis, here's a name of a person we send people to. Was not a good experience. The person shouldn't be, in my opinion, taking care of police officers.
Not culturally appropriate.
Yeah, not culturally appropriate. And so I was done with it at that point. Well, then, I'd met Emily and she's telling me all these things about this new person. So the seed was planted. And, I don't know how much of the story you want me to get into, but
it's your time.
Okay. It actually is, just everything that has happened with this is just it's pretty crazy. Like it was all meant to be. But the last day that I actually worked, literally actually worked in law enforcement, she had finally convinced me to go see Jennifer Cooper. Okay. And so I'm pulling into her driveway in Phoenix. I'm the on-call team leader, and a barricade kicks out back in Mesa. I didn't want to go to this therapist anyways, but I had finally listened to her, but it was an excuse for me, like, cool, I can cancel the appointment. And so I canceled and went and handled the barricade, and then I was home from the barricade, in about 45 minutes, and would get the hostage rescue call. And that was the last call in my career because that was my breaking point. I was done. Suicidal ideations, that was on the table for me. I had been dealing, when everything boiled up in 2016, I had been just, coping with alcohol, coping with working more. I was depressed. I was angry all the fucking time. Every day angry. A lot of time in our career, we're just like, oh, he's just salty. He's been on the job for a while. We laugh about it, right? Ha ha ha. And nothing's ever done. No one ever takes appropriate action, says, well, should we maybe figure out why he's angry? Should we maybe figure out why there's been this change in personality? what's going on with them. Let's offer them services. No, that's not how it's done. It's usually till it's a boiling point, and whether someone's made a mistake and gets in trouble on the job, or they just hit their breaking point in their personal life and they're done.
Yep.
That's when everyone's like, oh shit, what happened? Oh, we joke in our presentation, because one of the things I said when I went to see Jennifer Cooper, like, all of a sudden I started doing this stuff. She's like, okay. And she wants to chuckle a little bit and like, okay, well, tell me about your career. Tell me about, when I say what critical incidents have you been involved in, name some. And you start going through, and she's just a polite smile on her face. It's not all of a sudden. And and
I'm not laughing at you. I've been there, done it.
Because when you sit across from another cop, you're like, yep, I totally understand what you're saying. We have underestimated the effects of the cumulative trauma.
Yes.
One of the really cool things, I had never thought about this. So that I've been on Andy Stump and the Cleared Hot podcast.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mention him.
Oh yeah,
I didn't mention him, G. My son's gonna see this. And he's gonna, you're gonna mention it on the podcast.
I didn't. No, really good dude. But offline, he was telling me, because this dude's SEAL Team 6, and of course the elite. And you think, well, man, what they do is like so crazy and all this stuff. And it is. They've had to make some horrible decisions. They've lost comrades in arms, all this stuff. He said to me, when we look at you guys, he said, we don't know how you do it. When we go overseas, and we're on mission, we're with our brothers. When we go have something bad happen, we're there. We don't go home and have to go coach T-ball. We don't have to go home and the refrigerator's broken. We don't have to go home and deal with our personal life because we're away from all that right now. You guys, 4+ shifts a week, are in and out of chaos. And then people wonder, like, why are you pissed off? Why don't you want to be around people? We have underestimated the effects of cumulative trauma. In fact, when you read one of the books, it's the DSM-P5, something like that, my therapist could tell you, but under complex trauma, or complex PTSD, the biggest thing with that has to do with the repetitive exposure to trauma. Who is that? That's us, dude.
That is something that people don't comprehend. And again, I'm not talking about myself, but what I'm trying to explain is that one of my missions was to explain to non-law enforcement why cops do what they do and act the way they act. And they don't understand that on a 10-hour shift, a city cop's going from suicide to dead baby to murder to rape to cat out of the tree and then home.
Yep.
Wash, rinse, repeat tomorrow. And then the next day and the next day. And they just don't comprehend the trauma part of all of this. Like, we are not built to witness this shit over and over and over without some sort of an effect.
Right.
And the departments are not putting, again, I'm speaking old school here, any sort of an emphasis on mental health and mental trauma and anything like that. And I never once had any sort of a debrief. Never once.
That's crazy.
Yeah, never once. And then when I was on SIU and dealing with officer-involved shootings and dead officers and all that type of stuff, never once.
Yeah.
And they just expect you to, your ass had better be at the next call out.
Yeah. And you said something, man, because I forgot, like, a lot of your audience is not. And that's one of the biggest things. In fact, on my last slide of my presentation, I talk about lasting change. And I say, we need to educate the community and the government that you work for, meaning whether it's the state, the city, the county, whatever it is. And what I'm saying by that is this. You can literally go to a suicide call where you just see whatever brain matter all over the house. And the next call is you're going to a school where a nine-year-old is throwing a temper tantrum. And you wonder, like, man, that officer was rude. He was short. And I'm never condoning anything across the country where an officer, crosses the line and does things, because that makes us all hurt. But we need to start talking about the effects of this cumulative stuff, because it pushes us to do stuff. I will tell you, I'm not afraid to say it now. In my darkest days, starting shift, I'm angry. I'm pissed. I'm literally looking for, like, okay, what suspect wants to fight today? Because today is not the day. You chose the wrong day. And that's just the honesty, because you are dealing with depression. You're dealing with all the cumulative stuff. and some days are just not good, you know? And that's where I think we could come to a better understanding with the community if we were willing to talk about it. But they want to shove this shit under the rug all the time, our organizations do, and be like, well, we're supposed to just be robots and go out there. Like, that's bullshit, man. That's not how it works.
This leads us directly into your mission.
Yeah.
But stop and ask yourself, how many cops out there right now that are still doing the job would come and sit down and discuss the fact that, hey, I dealt with this, it messed me up this way. They don't.
Yeah, right.
Because we're still stuck in that I'm a robot mentality. You know, shove it down in and we'll deal with it later. The compartmentalization of everything.
Yeah. And I mean, man, as much as I've done and as much as I've come out and advocate for stuff, I don't know, what is it? Probably weekly, I have people coming to me, whether through social media or get my phone number or email. And the first thing, and they're struggling and they're looking for help. And the first thing I'll say, like, well, do you have any support at your organization? Because that's where I would like it to start. And inevitably, I don't trust it. That's what it is, man. And EAP, I'm sorry, but EAP is shit.
Yep.
Okay? I just, you know, and I've been to a couple very large organizations. I will tell you, I mean, I won't name it because they don't like it being named specifically, but a federal agency where we did something for a big, large group. And I knew in the audience that day that Jennifer and I presented, there was going to be someone from their EAP that was going to listen to us, right? And she listened and it was good. A little bit nervous because we're like, man, because I do say some stuff like, hey, just EAP doesn't work. Like, I'm sorry to hurt your feelings, but it doesn't. And I would say this with a caveat. If anyone in the country can tell me, show me where EAP, the cops trust it, I'll listen. But I've never found it. I'm just telling you that. So she listens to us the whole day and waits till everyone's out of the room and she's hanging around. I see her. I'm like, oh, shit, she's going to be pissed. But she comes up and she's like, man, you have such good stuff to say. She's like, why won't they come to me? And I said, I am sorry, but you don't as much. And I don't say this to hurt people's feelings. You don't understand our culture.
Right.
We do not trust too many people. And there's been too many times, I think, in the history where cops have tried to use EAP or they come forward for something else. And the next thing you know, every person in the department knows your business, right? You know, and we joke, oh, we're a bunch of high school girls. Okay, I get it, but we need to change that culture.
Yeah.
I mean, both of my organizations, it was hilarious when administration would meet on a Monday morning or whatever. And I would think, man, this is so inappropriate because an hour later, how do I know what happened in command staff meeting? How do I know who's getting investigated right now? And then you start thinking as you get mature, like, what if that's my name up there? And now everybody knows this shit. So you wonder why I'm not likely to use the traditional department services because I don't trust it. So it's a big thing. We have to, I say it, I joke, like we need to flip tables.
Don't EAPs also direct or report back to the departments?
They do.
That's the problem right there. You're never going to get anywhere.
Exactly. And I'll also say EAP. So Jennifer Cooper here in Arizona, whenever I do anything outside, because I live in Montana, we live in Montana now. Whenever I do stuff outside the state of Montana, Jennifer travels with me. We go from coast to coast. But in the state of Montana, I have two other therapists that they speak with me as well. And we have a contract with the Department of Corrections for the state of Montana. So we go to all the prisons and speak with employees. And she got contacted by the prison and said, hey, we'd love to add you on our EAP thing. She's like, okay, I'll listen to you. And so she starts the negotiation. The first thing is they say, we can do $45 an hour. She's like, that doesn't even keep my lights on.
Right.
They get up to $65 an hour, and that's just still not feasible. So I would compare it to this. If people don't understand with the workers' comp, any cop that gets hurt on duty and they have to go through workman's comp, it is like pulling teeth to get good care. Because a lot of times that is underpaid, physicians that are not doing the appropriate thing, and we want specialists. We want to be taken care of. The same thing with EAP and therapists. In fact, there's a guy from Canton, Ohio PD, and he said, I put it to my bosses like this. If your child was diagnosed with cancer, would you not want the best possible care for them? Well, of course. Why should I not expect the same for me, both physically and my mental health?
No.
Right? Why should we expect anything less than that?
I don't understand why it's not taken seriously.
Right.
I don't.
I don't either.
But at the same time, when I was 22 or 23 or whatever, when I first got into it, who thought about that stuff?
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to buy the new shiny thing and go out and kick down doors and have a good time. You're not thinking about the mental health and drinking at 1 o'clock in the morning and I just finished off 2 6-packs and it was nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yep.
And one of the things that drove me crazy, especially after Travis started coming forward in the department, like, okay, Travis is at the point where he's getting help now. I'm like, so we have to have these mandatory crisis intervention when someone in the public is feeling suicidal, having a crappy crisis day, which, yes, that's important for us to learn how to respond to those. I'm like, but there's nothing for when it comes to our own people. Like, how all this is important for other people, we have nothing for ourselves. I'm like, don't you want the best officer in the street to respond to that, but we're not going to fucking take care of them?
Right.
That, ass backwards to me. Yep. Ass backwards.
We're just held to a higher standard.
Yeah. You,
for
like
no
you said,
reason,
we're
without the
robots.
training.
This is what you signed up for. Do it.
And you talk about, AJ, the public. This is another thing. I think the public should be demanding more for our mental health, right?
Absolutely.
Because if I'm a chief and I obviously get appointed by whatever your government is, the city manager, whatever, the sheriff, you're elected. When you take that oath, you are telling the people that you are serving that you are going to put out the best possible product in us as the person to come out and help solve your problems and keep the public safe. Should I not be held to a standard to make sure that my people are healthy?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. The thing that's so lost in this day and age is that I don't know where the shift is. I don't know where it's happening. I don't know if it's leadership. I don't know if it's the boots on the ground. But I absolutely, positively did feel as though mentally I was going out there to be the good guy and to help get the bad guy, put the bad guy in jail, save the little old lady, do good for the community and help and all that stuff. And it just seems like that's kind of a lost art now. There's just, and maybe it's just from all the bullshit you see online and all you see is the negative and all you see are the cops doing the bad stuff. But these, again, being on the outside now and just seeing mostly news bullshit and reels and all that type of stuff, that's not the message that's pushed anymore. It's not about the community building and the bridge building with community members and law enforcement. It's not happening. Right. Which is causing distrust of law enforcement. I mean, look at what just happened with Phoenix PD, if you're familiar with what's going on with them.
DOJ.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, Phoenix has got some issues, but no, it's just, I don't know where that got lost in the mix, that like they should demand better from their people.
Yeah. Community partnership, you know what it is, but we just don't, unfortunately. When I started this, man, like when I first began speaking, I'm like, oh, maybe it's just me that dealt with all this. Maybe it's just my old organizations, anything like this. But every place I go, I come back or I show her this email or this. And I'm like, look at this. It is across the country. It is a problem, And I say that, my most important thing when we get up in front of groups, and this is our organization has evolved into things I never thought it was going to be, but my number one goal was to keep first responders alive. Yeah. Because our suicide rates are so out of control right now. Last year we had more officers commit suicide than killed in all other line of duty deaths.
What's the breakdown between male and female?
Good question. I couldn't tell you that right now, but definitely more male.
Absolutely.
And we're a male dominated, profession for sure. But because when I came to Mesa, do you remember the below 100 thing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So why don't we have anything like that for suicide prevention?
Because it's hard to talk about.
Yeah. And that's the problem. We got to be able to talk about it,
What's below 100?
Below 100 was like when I came to Mesa, put your seatbelt on, keep
Under
your speed
miles an
down,
hour.
100 miles an hour, and wear your vest. And with the below 100, the number meant to line of duty deaths below 100.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I was like, is that temperature? Because that'd be great. Yes, stay below 100.
But Emily, you said something about, what comes along with about suicidal ideation and all that. And there is not anybody who says, especially law enforcement, that they have not had suicidal ideations is a fucking liar. Every single person has had it. It's whether or not they so choose to admit it. And then also, there's the difference between suicidal ideations and actually making a plan.
Yeah.
Right.
There is
Correct.
a distinction
Right.
between
There
the
is.
two.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think law enforcement in and of itself is just so stigmatized to not come forward and not talk about it, because what's going to happen? You're gonna get your badge taken away, your
Yes.
gun taken away. You're gonna
And that's
put
the
on admin
problem,
leave.
man.
Yep.
Yeah, because suicidal ideations, it does not have to be a death sentence.
Right.
You know, now I always say in my presentations, like, yeah, if your department finds you, you're sitting in your truck somewhere, gun in the mouth, you're ready to go. Obviously, we got to take some very, big steps for safety, right? We're going to keep you alive. Me looking at my gun every day, because I have a gun every day, and think like, oh man, I could stop the pain right now. That's a suicidal ideation. And then you go on without your day. But if you come forward with that, what's your organization going to do? You should know.
Oh, they're gonna take your gun, they're gonna take your badge.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sitting across, the first time, she didn't even know I'd ever had these suicides. I couldn't even tell her. I sit across from Jennifer Cooper, and she said, "You ever thought of suicide?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Explain it." And so I talked to her about this. It was either the gun, or we rode Harleys when we lived in Arizona. It's like, yep, 100 miles an hour, I can go right in the front of that truck. I won't feel a thing. It'll all be done. And she's like, "Okay, that's pretty normal in your profession. Let's talk about it." And I was blown away. First time I'd ever heard that. 2 days later, I go to the psychiatrist that she's sending me to because she wants me to go on some PTSD medication. Tell him the same thing. He's like, "Yeah, Travis, very common." "Oh, in fact, just had a Phoenix firefighter in here this morning, told me the same thing. It's common." I'm like, what? Why did I not know that? Because they don't want to educate us on that. Because if I know that that's normal, like, okay, I don't want to feel like that. There's something that's causing me to say, like, yeah, I want the pain to stop. Because what people need to understand, our number one thing that we do every day, first responders, we solve problems.
Yep.
And I'm going to solve
Never your own.
Right?
Never your own.
But I can solve my own problem, right? Because you tell me that, oh shit, like Travis was drinking too much, working too much, angry, depressed, intestinal issues, all this shit going on. Well, if none of this stuff works, or if it doesn't get better, yeah, I can do it. I know how I do it. I've seen them. There's no mystery to suicide. I know what a 12 gauge looks like, a 9mm looks like, a hanging, a cutting, whatever it is. No mystery to me, and I know how I'd do it, and I know how I'd succeed. And that is a very normal thought that happens. I mean, I've seen even numbers as high as 58% of people that have been surveyed, and that's the people willing to admit it. Right. That's a high freaking number.
Right.
You know, because you know how it is. I mean, at Mesa PD, we'd have these, what it was, like a survey. And it says, oh, it's, it's totally anonymous. We'd always be like, it's not anonymous. Well, they're going to see
As
who
you're logging in with your badge number.
Yeah.
they're going to see. But I think a lot of times that's what cops think too with any of these things. Like, well, if I'm honest, somebody's going to know that I said this, right? So, man, we just have to be able to talk about it. And, there's this old thing out that people said, oh, the more you talk about it, it's going to make people do it. That's bullshit. It's been proven that's wrong. So people just want they want to be able to talk about it. They want to know that someone's going to listen. And their career's not going to be done. They still can work through it and go back to work and do the things they need to do.
It's very, like, there are moments, just like you said, that example, like, yeah, there needs to be drastic measures that sometimes need to be taken. That person's a danger to themselves, they're a danger to the community. Okay.
Right.
But let's, just like a broken ankle.
Yep.
Why can't we just give them some time to heal and,
Right.
Send them on a little vacation for a little bit and get the mental rest and clarity that they need and the tools to deal with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's it, man.
But
and
it's
I
always
was
alcohol.
uneducated. Even my unit, like he said, my unit had to see Jen just because of the internet, like the type of stuff we had to see. And of course, we're like, why doesn't everybody have to see someone? Like, I think it's crazy to me because our unit, it's expected to. We're looking at some shitty stuff. Like, we know that going ahead. I'm like, patrol's way worse. You have no idea what you're going to respond to. At least in ICAC, it's like, I know I'm going to see child porn all day. Great. But in patrol, you're like, I don't know what I'm responding to. This DV, am I going to get ambushed? Am I going to be doing CPR on a kid? Like, I mean, I think that needs to be mandatory for patrol of all places, because that's like the area where every day is different. You have no idea what it's going to turn into. And then for the education part I was talking about, so I was already seeing Jen with my unit. He started seeing Jen. And still, when he told me he had suicidal ideations, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, what do you mean? And of course, I'm like, initially, I'm like, oh my God, we should be worried. But then talking with Jen and him, and it's like, oh yeah, so this is normal. Just, it's normal for our profession to have these things. And it's like, okay, now I get it. Now I'm like, oh, okay. But that needs to be known. And it is okay for someone to be like, you know what? Yeah, I've thought about this, and this is how I would do it. But anyways, there's no plan. There's no like action behind it. But we need more education on it, that it's you are not crazy if those things go through your head.
Yeah.
So
I think the term is, this is my personal phraseology of it, if that's even a word. It's common.
yeah,
Yes.
It's
common.
not normal.
Yeah. Yes.
It's abnormal.
Yep.
But it's common.
Yes.
But
Yep.
nobody wants to talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
No, there's so in our presentation, we do a video from a he's brother of mine, former cop, that he talks about his suicidal ideations in a video. I'd done a podcast with him. AJ, I cannot tell you how many of my presentations now, you'll see it, like dudes will eyes water up.
No.
People hang out afterwards, waiting till everyone's gone. They come up and they're almost relieved because they thought they were the only ones that ever felt like that. And he talks about specifically like, yeah, every day coming home, take my gun out of the holster and it was a bad day. Like, yep, I could do that right now. All the pain would be gone. My family, I'm causing them problems because I'm angry. I'm not doing this right. And I could just end it right now. And you see the response. People are like, holy shit, I thought I was the only one.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
That video is very powerful.
I'll share with this, and I didn't personally have those types of suicidal ideations, and I also didn't think it was suicidal ideation until I spoke to somebody, and they were like, that's suicidal ideation. I was a state trooper, so therefore I was in the middle of nowhere with no backup. My closest backup was sometimes 45 minutes away, but when I worked day shift, the cool thing about being the trooper is that I could go anywhere I wanted within my beat and do whatever I wanted. I would go to the worst of the worst areas and conduct traffic stops, and I would say, that car's got 6 people in it, that car's got 3. I'm going to go for the one with 6. And I used to go to the roughest and worst areas and conduct traffic stops. Maybe that would be the day.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be the day I go in a blaze of glory.
It's very much suicidal ideation. You're pushing yourself to a risky point that you shouldn't be in, but you're like, if it happens, it happens. Yep. Yeah, that's again, it's common. So yeah, yep.
I've never admitted that before. So
okay.
yeah, that's
right on. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I
That's
look
what
back.
we need, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my goal with this podcast, was to talk about this and to educate people. Like, this is not normal shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've mentioned it a couple of times, though. So since law enforcement, you have started an organization where this is your mission.
Yeah.
This is your mission, to talk about first responders, to talk about mental health, to talk about why we don't talk about it.
Right. Yeah. Our organization is completely organic, man. When I retired, Emily and I had already bought 14 acres up in a small little town in Montana.
That's so awesome.
It is
Totally
awesome.
jealous.
Although
Agreed.
they woke up this morning and sent us pictures. We got snow this morning, but
I'll
That's
take
not
that over
awesome.
this. I'll take this over this, though.
I
it'll
got
be
a pool. I'm gonna go in
know.
the pool. I'm not shoveling snow.
it'll be 80 by Saturday, I think they said. But anyways, we'd already bought property. I was actually had a job lined up. I was going to work construction with a guy that was eventually ended up building our house. And I was going to kind of just go up and be by myself, be with us and do our thing. And no shit, we had sold our house in Mesa. I'm pulling a big trailer with my truck. Her and her dad are behind me in a U-Haul. And I get a call from a buddy of mine that I've been friends with in the national SWAT community for years. And he used to work in the Tri-City, Washington area, retired from there, and then became an undersheriff in Flathead County, which is in Kalispell, Montana. And he said, hey, I know you're moving up here. And I had just told him only about 2 weeks prior why I had really retired, because the shame. I didn't want to tell a lot of people. And so he knew, but he had called me. He said, hey, there's a tactical leadership conference up here. Can you come do one of your debriefs from Mesa? These guys don't get as much operations as you guys. It would be great. And I said, sure, man, I can do that. I have plenty of, debriefs I can give them. Well, I hung up the phone. I'm driving by myself. And as you do when you're driving, your mind's going crazy. And I had already, the only experience I had of telling a group of people is when I decided to retire, I went and told my team, or put in for the post-traumatic stress injury retirement. Even my lieutenant, she told me, she's like, Travis, I'll deal with it. You don't have to. I said, no, it's my brothers. I want to tell them, and they need to hear it from me. And it wasn't a big deal. It was like an hour long. I told them what had all been on with me. And a lot of them knew some of the calls I had been on and understood it. But I was shocked, man, because a couple dudes from my team, we never talked about mental health. They do the thing that, us guys that don't want to talk in front of people do. And a couple of them hung out. And next thing I know, they're shedding tears with me like, man, I've never knew that anybody felt like I did. And because of that, they went and got some help. And now our team is like, they're a bunch of mental health advocates. They all go to people, and it's amazing. But
That's got to feel good.
it does, man.
gotta
Yeah.
feel good.
But I think that was the spark that told me, like, man, because I'm nobody. I'm just a SWAT dude, a cop. Like, I'm sharing my story, and like this had this impact. So, man, I had this little thought, and I called this guy back. I said, hey, what if I get up in front of this group and I talk about my career from the standpoint of don't be Travis, pretty much. Like, I don't want you, this is the shit I did. I don't want you to deal with it, and this is why it's important to get help. Did it, and it had an overwhelming response. And in fact, there was a couple guys in there. That's how the Cleared Hot thing happened, because they were friends with Andy, because Andy lives up in Kalispell. And he...
I've got his GPS coordinates.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so he said, before I was home, he was texting me and like, hey, my buddy said I should have you on the podcast. And so that happened, and about the time that happened, the National Tactical Officers Association got with me, and they're like, hey, would you come and teach at the conference in Milwaukee in September? And I'm like, what? And so I started doing that. And then my message started growing in Montana. So then I'm like, I better create something here. So I created, my arena, the organization, got my, all the licensing. And then I started, doing better with my PowerPoints, and like, okay. And then it's growing in Montana. Well, Jennifer Cooper, she can't be flying to Montana. So then I started like, well, I wonder if there's any therapists that treat first responders. So I got, again, just organic, was put in touch with a couple people, and it just started growing. And dude, I have never, I don't sit in front of my computer and like, oh, I'm going to send 10 things out to departments today to try to get them to have me come in. It's all been word of mouth.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's just, and then I get a big break in the state of New York. Someone heard about me, it's the, what is it called? So New York State has the state actually has their own Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, wow.
And someone hears about me through there, and they say, hey, will you come speak at this conference? I'm like, okay. So I go and I speak at that conference, and then the New York thing blows up, and I've been back there, I don't know, half a dozen times now. Nice. And then it just starts snowballing, man. I've been down to Tucson Tactical. A couple guys heard. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Tucson Tactical had us come in just for all the negotiators canines. So that was good, because I definitely like talking to the SWAT guys. Definitely they speak my language. Yeah. And man, I literally just kind of I think I'm just a normal dude, and they relate to me. I'm not a guy in a business suit up there sitting up trying to tell you this is what I learned in a book. I'm telling you, this is what I did. And then probably the most unique thing is then the therapist walks side by side with me in my presentation, meaning that, like the one that we're doing one for the Arizona Tactical Officers Association, on Wednesday. And how it'll flow is, I give my background and all this stuff. I talk about my career. And then through numerous times throughout the presentation, Jennifer Cooper talks about, this is why Travis was going through this. Okay. This is what this looks like. This is what post-traumatic stress looks like. This is what PTSD looks like. This is EMDR therapy, how I treated him. This is cognitive behavioral therapy. We do a big block on suicide. All this, so... You hear the dude that was the boots on the ground. Like, I say in the audience, I'm like, I'm you. Like, I could be sitting in your chair right now. And then you have the clinician who I have vetted that is culturally competent. They're going to tell you what's really going on. Yeah. And they explain it in a way that it's like, no shit. Like, this would be a normal response to this abnormal shit we see every day. And you see like light bulbs going off. Like, what? Why have I never been told this? Why was I not taught this in the academy?
Day one.
Yeah, man. And this is what I will tell organizations right now. You're kind of on the hook, because last year, so IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, all the heavy hitter departments send their leadership to those conferences, right?
To get that badge, their
IACP
get their,
certified. Exactly. 2023, they put out a suicide prevention report for law enforcement. And they go through recommendations how we can bring the numbers down. One of the biggest paragraphs they talk about, day one in the academy, throughout the entire career, there is regular mental health training, and we talk about suicide prevention, and we stop the culture. The culture, they say, is the biggest hurdle we have.
Interesting.
And now you have the IACP, a worldwide organization, saying these things that we preach. There's no more turning our backs and sweeping the shit under the rug. You know, because another thing I talk about is like getting labor organizations involved. You guys need to start demanding mental health care, and it needs to be priority. And I get it. I've been a part of so many contracts. You want pay and you want benefits.
Yep.
Maybe you should start looking at your mental health as some of that stuff included. That because I want to get to my retirement and I still want to be healthy. You know?
But it's just the goal is to just get to your 20, get to your 20, get to your 20, get to your 20.
The golden handcuffs,
right? Not what happened. Well, now it's your 25.
Yeah,
It's not even 20. But what happens after that 20 when you're so fucked up mentally you can't do anything besides cry in the corner every day?
Yeah,
like that's a reality sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, what are they? I say this in my presentations. I think the average lifespan of a police officer right now is around 57 years of age. The general public's in the mid 70s. Should that not tell you something? We're living 20 years less than the general population because of the shit that goes on. Not that we have physical challenges too, knees, backs, whatever, shoulders. But the mental stuff, if we really get into what that does, the lack of sleep, the over and over again, the chaos, the stress, the cortisol's all fucked up, our testosterone's all fucked up, all this stuff over and over again. And that stuff adds up, man. At the end of the career, it is not good if you haven't taken care of your shit. No,
and then how many cops don't take care of themselves physically? You know, not only on the mental side, but I mean, again, you both are in obviously fabulous shape. That goes hand in hand with your mental health. That is like, I don't understand. You know, I mean, at my previous department, there was zero emphasis on physical standards in any way, shape. They didn't have physical standards after you were in. They did for a couple years, and they tried to bring it back, but it just failed abysmally. And then you have fat officers, and they're fucking fat.
Yes.
There's no other way to put it. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. Like,
no, there's not.
No, get your ass out there and work out.
Right.
If you're going to be coming through my door to rescue my ass, you better be able to fit through the door.
Right.
If you can't fit because your muscles are so big, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it's your belly, no.
Yeah.
In this day and age, every department should have paid workout time on duty, and they should be requiring annual physical fitness tests, in my opinion. And they can approach it from the mental health standpoint, because I do believe my dedication to nutrition and physical health kept me on my feet longer than I would have been. But that was always at least some sort of a foundation I had, just push. And it did help me, and it still helps me. I have to, I mean, I don't have people always ask like, man, you're so good now. I'm like, man, I still have rough days, brother.
Sure.
And that workout, you know, we now have a home gym and stuff in Montana. And that's like, I got to get my workout in. I need that hour and a half of release, and much better after that. So
it drops the cortisol levels, helps with anxiety, helps with depression. Again, if we just get the rest of the world to understand that instead of popping a fucking pill.
Yeah, right.
Or injecting themselves with a diabetic medication.
Exactly. Yep.
Instant gratification.
Amen. And they want to do that with their mental health too, which is not possible.
Yeah, no, it's not.
I just want to mention something real quick, because he was talking about his presentations with Jen and with Gypsy and Brandon, the therapists in Montana. Not only I'm biased because he's my husband, but his story's cool. He's openly, pours it all out, and then the therapists give the educational piece, but they also provide resources at the end.
Okay.
Because every time, and I can say that every time at the end of their presentation, someone in the crowd, either right after or we'll get emails of like, I need some help. And so it's not just like, hey, thanks for listening to our story, for being here. Peace out, Girl Scout. They actually provide resources and like, okay, you're bad right now. Let me help you. Oh, you're in a different state. Let me get my connections and network and try to get you connected. Like every day something's happening. So the providing of resources, I think, is huge. Because
I have seen people in this space, per se, that they go and they do their thing and then they're out. Yeah. And then I can't do that, man, because she is not lying. Like in Montana, they'll laugh. Like when I go with those therapists, they're like, oh, I wonder how many new patients I'm going to have today. And they both have now just went to nothing but first responders, because it is all the time. And so coming to Arizona, I'm working with Jen. I'm like, hey, are we ready? Because I know we're going to have some people in the audience like, I need it. Because when we go through, she does a great job of explaining what post-traumatic stress and PTSD looks like. And it's going through all the signs and symptoms and all this. And people are like, holy shit, I'm checking those boxes. And like, that's cool. Like, it's not the end. It's not the end of the world. Right. We just need to get you through some stuff. Right. And people don't understand, like, this is another thing for leadership, man. Like, if you aren't sitting across from the therapists that are helping your people, you're failing. You need to understand what this looks like, because you talked about the whole injury thing and what that looks like, because that's the biggest thing with mental health. I don't see the injury.
Right.
How do I know that's real? Well, we play a video that specifically talks about EMDR.
Okay.
Eye movement
I have not done it, but I'm familiar with it. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
I just spoke over you, so please say that again for the audience.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so I won't even begin to explain it. You can look it up, but we do play a video, and one of the therapists, I think she's with Houston PD, and she says, it is so crazy to me still that if you break your arm, well, you go get a cast, you fix it. Of course the department's going to take care of you. When this happens, why is everyone like, we can't do that? But they explain scientifically it's a cognitive break. When you and I, if we respond to whatever, take a fatal car accident, you may, if things are firing properly, you may process that whole scene almost instantaneously. Not that you're going to forget it. Not to say this like, man, that was a really shitty call. I didn't like seeing this family that was dead, whatever. The other officer with you possibly could have a cognitive break. And for whatever reason, they don't know why yet. They're still trying to figure that out. That during the reprocessing, it doesn't go back to the storage facility in your brain appropriately, and it just stays in the frontal lobe. And then any little trigger can bring that up.
Okay.
So Jen explains it like this. She said, when you open your laptop, you have the little icons, things that you go to regularly that show up in your desktop. If you have not processed that traumatic call appropriately, every time you open something, boom, it's right there.
Okay.
Versus it's been processed back into a memory. Like I have a lot of traumatic calls I can tell you about.
Sure.
But a trigger's not getting there. And I'll give you an instance. You being from, DPS, we talked about a trooper in Montana. And after one of our presentations, he had never heard this before. He comes up to me. He's like, man, I want to tell you something because this really stuck with me. When we were talking about triggers from a call, he said, I go to a fatal car accident. I'm walking up to the car. And I knew right away there had been a kid involved because I see like little kids' nail polish.
Yeah.
He said the bottle of nail polish that I saw, I had used that exact same nail polish painting my little girl's fingers before I came to work. I see that in my house every time, and I'm fighting back tears because I'm right back on that call that day. I'm like, that's exactly what it is. You had a cognitive break. So he went and got some help, and he processed through it, and now he's good. He will never forget the call.
Right.
But it's not coming up, unwanted. It's not being the spontaneous shit. You're sitting across from your wife and like, why the hell am I seeing this dead body right now? That's not appropriate. I don't want that happening. So yeah, it's huge, man. The whole thing with the clinicians, I do think that's one of the unique things that we do, because I want people to know this is number one. This is what a culturally competent therapist looks like.
Yeah.
And we need way more of them.
Oh my gosh. We're so short, brother. Yeah. I mean, everywhere we go, like we need more and more and more. So we're trying to recruit. That's like a next big thing we're maybe talking about doing. But
are they moving into do you know, is there more clinicians that are moving into law enforcement solely, or
there is
some sort of training part?
There's a lot of people trying to connect or trying to recruit them. The problem is, man, I don't want to get too political. That some of our universities have a liberal undertone, right? Mm-hmm. Not many therapists coming out are ready to go help first responders. And this is the difference too. I never understood this until actually about a few months ago, where I was doing some educational stuff with therapists. Generally speaking, when someone's going to school to become a clinician, whatever type of therapist, psychiatrist, they teach like you keep the patient at arm's length.
Understood.
You don't tell anything about yourself.
Understood.
You don't build a relationship. The difference is with a culturally competent therapist, we need a relationship.
Absolutely.
I have to trust them. If I'm going to sit across and cry in front of Jennifer Cooper and tell her all the demons, tell her about suicidal ideations that I can't even tell my wife, I need to know that she's there for me. And she's almost like my car partner, that she's going to be the one going out on shift with me. Like I got to take you down some dark holes, Travis, but I'm telling you, I'll stand side by side. And if you can't get up, I'm pulling you up. I am there for you. That's a big ask for some therapists, but it is what is working. I'm telling you, I've seen it with all the 3 therapists that I work with. Amazing stories of these cops get across from them like, man, I trust them. Yeah. Like they have, and I think to get the right people, they almost have a calling too, just like you and I. Right?
Just like law enforcement.
Yeah, yep.
And that's something that's lost on the public, is that it is a calling.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that therapist, like, they're going to hear, you imagine the stuff they have to hear, the stuff that we get, you know, the secondary trauma, but they believe in public safety so much. They want to help us be better to go out there and serve the public. I mean, to me, it's like, that's an amazing thing that they're willing to stand side by side with us to get us well, to make sure we can keep going out there and serving the public. They're part of the team, and that's how it has to be looked at.
Public service is a sacrifice.
Yes.
It absolutely is. You sacrifice your time. Sometimes you sacrifice part of your First Amendment rights. Yes. But so I can't get other cops to come on and talk, but they're scared. But
Not me.
It is a sacrifice, but it needs to be backed up with the proper support. It needs to be backed up with, it should just be built into the program.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I agree.
It should just be all baked in together. Like, here you go. We know you're going to deal with some shit.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's one of the big things, because I do have a pretty strong network across the country now of therapists and doctors that have chosen this path. But all of them say we got to do better at recruiting. So there's lots of talks going on, like when we start holding the conferences where we bring therapists in that are interested. Because like Jennifer Cooper, for instance, she's kind of naturally culturally competent. Her dad was a Vietnam veteran, became a U.S. Marshal, worked out of Tucson. She worked probation, was a supervisor of probation for a while.
It's built into
her. So she knows, and then she does stuff for Phoenix Fire, like for crisis response stuff. So she gets it, right? Versus you can have someone, like we have someone actually in Montana that she is very interested in. And so we've started her out with this group that we work with. She right now is handling families of law enforcement or families of first responders. She's learning the culture. And then when we feel she's ready, she's still going through, I think they had to put like 3,000 hours in under supervision of meeting with people. And then we're going to bring her into the fold of like, okay, now we're going to put you with first responders because she's learned the culture. And that can be anything. You go on ride-alongs, you go to trainings, you read policy, you try to figure out what makes us do the things we do, why we do them. And just maybe, getting into our head a little bit of like, what does this look like? And we always tell people like, when we go places like, come listen to Travis, because you want to get into a first responder's head for 8 hours. Here you go. I'll let you take a look.
Bring a flashlight.
Yeah, bring it. Yeah, exactly.
It's going to get a little dark.
Yeah, yes. It does get dark. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about, and we've had an offline conversation about this over text.
Yeah.
Non-traditional therapies.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be me if I didn't bring up cannabis on my podcast.
Absolutely.
And I will say that for those who don't know my story is, the cumulative trauma, all that bullshit. My back injury occurred, dealt with a shooting of a police officer, investigated it, had an awesome relationship with alcohol at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were buddies.
Great.
Yeah. Alcohol, Jack was not nice to me.
Right.
Got into an altercation with my wife, and I was arrested.
Okay.
That's what ended my career.
Okay.
So, but little did I know that it was all trauma based. It was all PTSD based. My wife she's just not here right now. We've been together.
Yeah.
We've worked through all that good stuff, but it was 100% all because of the job.
Yep.
And so moving forward, when my back injury exploded, I started using cannabis, and then through my use of cannabis for the back pain, and I've told the story before. It's one particular night, one particular strain. I'm standing in my kitchen. I'm probably raiding the right side of my refrigerator, and all of a sudden I'm back where this one particular shooting occurred. I was not the shooter. I was the investigator. I was the detective on it. I didn't, I wasn't there for the shots, but just dealing with the dead police officer and all that type of stuff, and that. All of a sudden, I'm standing in my kitchen, and I'm there, and I'm there, and I'm dealing with, and I'm smelling and seeing and hearing. But what the cannabis allowed me to do was it allowed my brain to stop being my brain and allowed me to disassociate. And then I was able to walk through the entire process. I was able to walk through from start to finish. I could never, real quick backstory, it happened up in Show Low. My ex lives in Show Low, so my children at the time lived in Show Low, so I did a lot of going back and forth. Just the thought of going to Show Low gave me anxiety, because I would literally pass right by the hotel where the officer was shot and killed. So, but that's where I I had these amazing realizations and disassociation, and I was able to work through my feelings and connect with what the hell was happening. And that happened a couple years after the trauma had occurred. And it got me to the point where I was like, holy shit, I can talk about that situation without wanting to burst into tears and break down crying. And I don't know why, because I didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I didn't even get shot at. But it was just one of those things where it's like, this was the thing that bothered me.
Yep.
Why did the 2 dead girls in the head-on collision not bother me? I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
You don't know.
There's no rhyme or reason.
No, but this bothered me.
Yeah.
So that's when I really started diving into the mental health component of cannabis. So that was just sort of, and I had asked you about it before, like, what does your organization think about cannabis or ayahuasca or psilocybin or whatever the case may be?
So this is what I can tell you. In the first responder profession, alcohol is wrecking lives.
Yes, it is.
It is the most widely abused chemical that I've of anything, to be quite honest with you. It's part of our culture.
Yep.
From day one, it's a rough shift. Let's go have choir practice. Let's get together on the weekends because this week was really shitty. We're going to drink until we can't hardly stand.
Yep.
And the problem with that is then when you get into a place like I was, it's the easy go-to because it numbs you for a little bit. You're like, yep, I'm feeling okay. I feel like I'm calming down. My head's going to hit the pillow and I'm going to go to sleep pretty quickly. Shitty sleep. We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
But still we do it. What I have seen with guys that have left the profession that have used cannabis afterwards, they're like, why in the hell can't we use this when we're working? Because I'm sure, isn't it all over the valley now? Firefighters can use it all the time.
So I can't speak whether or not that's by doctrine, but I do know for a fact they just don't talk about it.
Okay.
It's a government organization and they're allowed to use it.
Right.
So I'm fighting that battle.
So I mean, I have a good buddy. We have a good buddy that actually asked some administration people like, hey, you know, what would be wrong with having, you know, prescribed dosed amounts of marijuana for back pain, for mental stress, things like that. And it gets shut down immediately.
He even wrote AZ posts about it and got
wrote
shut
AZ
down.
posts and got shut down. And
I want to have that battle.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure
I want to
you
have
do.
that battle.
Because if anyone wants to argue with me on that, I'll say, oh, yeah. And you remember you and I, how many times we got drunk together? And was that good for us? Because that's what it comes down to, man. It's still accepted. Alcohol is still, I mean, it's in our culture, right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's still abused completely. Now, I always say, like, I don't believe, and I don't know what you think, but yeah, I think there's a problem with our kids smoking it too early, stuff like that.
100%.
They need to have mature brains and all that before they get into it. But what we're talking about from the mental health standpoint, I think it could be life-changing. The other stuff you mentioned, whether it's ketamine or psilocybin or whatever, it's coming. You better hang on because our departments, I've seen it. There's some agencies in Missoula that are allowing it now, which is amazing. Through insurance, doing ketamine treatments. I've personally seen it change people's lives. When they were at a sticking point with all their therapies and they go through and they have a breakthrough. And what I would say to leadership, because it's always the leadership, right? It's always the leadership. I would say, give me an alternative.
Right.
Is what we're doing now working? If it's not, because I know for the military, they're talking about, I'm pretty sure a bill just got passed or introduced that it'll allow active duty military members to do ketamine.
Nice.
Yeah. So if we're going down that route, why wouldn't we go down that with first responders as well? And I think it's hard because Emily did a bunch of undercover work in Seattle. She's going into rave parties, doing MDMA, all that stuff.
I didn't do it. I purchased it. Jeez.
Seattle PD
I have
recruitment just
never
went through the
done
roof.
MDMA in my life.
So, yeah, I guess I misspoke. That's funny. But
damn.
Yeah.
Deep undercover.
Popping off.
And so we know all these things in our career. Like I would say, I always tell people, because we do talk about this in our presentation. This is coming from the guy that when I started my career in 1996, I was taking people to jail for a roach in their ashtray.
Yep.
Right? And I'm not talking, we're doing a cite and release. You're getting booked, you know? So when I talk about it, it's crazy to think like, holy shit, how far you have come. But it's because I'm not ignorant to it anymore. And I've seen so many positive cases of how it's changed people's lives. I've seen guys that have left that were abusing the shit out of alcohol, whether it was for sleep or whatever, and they turned to cannabis, and they are a different person.
Amen.
They're
Amen.
getting sleep
Amen.
now like never before. And if you talk to anybody that has a medical professional, or a therapist or whatever, the number one thing killing our cops and wrecking our lives is the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
It is not good sleep. Even if you got someone working night shift, if you were able to take a gummy and go and make sure you are getting 7 hours of quality sleep versus shit ass sleep, you go on to shift the next night and it just keeps building and building and building. Yeah, man, I am totally for it. And to be honest with you, AJ, it's coming. Like, I think things are going to change. It's just, you know how our profession is.
Yep.
It's so much bureaucratic red tape bullshit of where we're getting there. It's just everyone wants to put their foot down and stop it for a while. But, like, it's coming. Like, if you really look at it globally and what's happening in the world and what's happening, the science behind, whether it's cannabis, whether it's ketamine, if you looked at it, and that's why, like, are the leadership, will they sit down with someone and listen about it? Will they try to understand, or are they just like, nope, I'm not going to have anything to do with it?
I'm Gen X. I went through the DARE program, you know, I mean, weed was bad.
Yep.
I'm now the state director for Arizona Normal.
Yep.
You know, I got a thing or two to say about weed now, but it's to have been on the side of arresting people for I've done the exact same thing. Unfortunately, I've taken people to jail for, zigzags, to now I'm the state director for Arizona Normal. It is so goddamn stupid to even put alcohol and cannabis on the same plane.
Yep.
It is like, guess what? I use cannabis every single day of my life because of my back pain. I take a gummy for whatever I use. That is responsible. That is not smoking weed and then getting in my car and driving and all that good stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. But I always say, like, using it with intention and purpose.
Yes.
You're not going to take Xanax, for funsies.
Yes.
You're just not. If you're prescribed it, you're going to use it as prescribed. Now, there are people who use it, but that's not the people I'm talking about. I'm talking about even the recreational users of cannabis. Great, fine.
Yeah.
How many times as cops did you fight with somebody on cannabis alone?
Right.
Yeah.
The answer is zero.
You're right. Yeah.
Zero.
Yep.
It was cannabis and.
Right.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But the person who was just smoking weed.
They're like happy, they're laid back, whatever. Yeah.
And again, I am not one of these people. Also, I do not believe that it is the cure all for everything.
Yeah.
I think in moderation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I'm a seasoned user, if I go grab a joint that's infused with some live hash rosin, I'm going to be okay with that. But the first time user who uses that, they're going to freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
So, moderation, learning what you're, but that's the problem is we don't have standardization. And if, just like you said, if they were able to come home, take a good heavy indica gummy and then go to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to change lives.
Right. Exactly.
And again, it's just so, I don't give a shit what propaganda you put in front of me anymore. I can hit it with the other side and be like, no, fuck off. This is the real thing.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Now that we have the ability to, again, once it gets rescheduled to Schedule 3 and they can actually do testing and they can do all that type of stuff, we'll have so much more data. But even with what we have now, it's night and day. It's the old guard needs to just shut up about it and be like, okay, let's move forward. Because again, alcohol is ruining people's lives.
It is,
ruining
man.
my life.
Yeah.
100%.
No, and there's never...
100%.
Now, I shouldn't say never. I've known a few people who they're dealing with their mental health and they're not drinkers because whether religious purposes or whatever, 99% of the time, I'd say people that reach out, like alcohol is on board.
Yes.
And I always say, like, well, how much alcohol are you drinking? Because it's just a common question.
Yes.
Like, well, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. Yep. Okay. We need to deal with that. And it's not working. It's not helping them at all. It's totally fighting against everything we're trying to correct, so we've got to stop that. Marijuana, it's never like, oh, you're smoking too much weed or you're doing this. It's never that,
It's never that.
So we've got to just open our minds, man. You can't sit across from me. Like, if I don't care who you are. I don't care what chief you're, over, you're a sheriff, like sit across from me and be like, is what we're doing now working? Like, could you as that number one person in your department, if you get a call tonight and someone in your department took their own life, can you honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm doing everything I can? Most of the times it's not, man. And sometimes we have organizations doing everything they can. Their actions is pushing people to make those decisions because they don't feel comfortable coming forward. We have a suicide epidemic and we have to change how we're doing things. The unfortunate part of our organization, the business that I'm in now, is I hear about them all.
Yeah.
And there are many, many, many that are not even reported, because to get on the national, I follow firsthelp.org, right? And they put out the stuff. But to get on that list, they have to have permission from the family and they have to have permission from the organization. So you can imagine both those things. Sometimes
It's embarrassment.
one of those two do not want them on that list, whether it's family. Like, I mean, we were dealing with one that it kind of came out in the public. I don't even know how it happened. And a daughter reached out to some organization and put it out. She's like, no, you can't tell people that's how he died. He was a very private person. And they tried to explain to her, like, we're just trying to educate, but they weren't having it. So that happens a lot. We're not good on tracking dispatchers taking their own lives. Firefighters. We have so many volunteer firefighters across the country that they're not listed as a firefighter. It's the construction guy that goes and does.
Wow, I never thought about that.
So there's so many of those that are underreported, man. And law enforcement is huge too. So we just have to do things different, man. I'm happy to be in this space, but we've got a lot of work to do. So,
And it's not just it's not just suicides though. People need to understand, like, just like you said, let's say we get to the root of the anger. Well, then we're going to have better outcomes with the public.
Right.
You know, you got that officer that's got, 57 citizens complaints against them and they're all sustained. That's a problem.
Right.
You know, maybe they are just a moron and can't understand how to speak to people. But at the same time, like, if there's a change in somebody's behavior and their mentality going through the career, well, then that's a ginormous red flag that things are going on.
Absolutely. And I say this too for leadership, because we do one of the things we're doing now, we just signed a contract with the National Tactical Officers Association. We're creating curriculum for them. And one of the classes we're doing is for leadership, how to respond to critical incidents after the fact, meaning the scene's secure. Now, how do you deal with your people? What do you need to give them? And then we also talk about discipline, because when I comes knocking with a notice of investigation, how many times they say, also in correlation, we're going to have you meet with some people. We want to make sure you're okay. Never fucking happens. It's always about the policy. It's always about what you did wrong. We're missing the boat. Because I know you can, just like me, many people we worked alongside, and you saw the changes in behavior, even if it was only minuscule, piece by piece. Like, man, 5 years ago, they used to be a totally different person. Man, they're pissed all the time. Man, they're getting a ton of citizen complaints for being rude, for yelling, whatever. It doesn't even have to be physical.
Right.
And it just keeps going. But what does our organizations do? Because we're military style. It's just like, no, we're gonna punish them for the policy violation. And there's no corresponding response from peer or whoever it is that says, hey, we just want to sit down with you. We've noticed a change in behavior. Obviously, you have some discipline things going on.
Right.
We want to help you. Is there something can we provide you resources? How's your family? What's going on with sleep? How's your drinking?
Those questions were never asked.
Right.
Ever.
But shouldn't it? Yeah. AJ, seriously, should it not? Like, all the chiefs and sheriffs say, we care about our people. They get on a video or they do whatever and like, we're here for you. Are you?
No.
Show me by action. And I will tell the officer too, like, if you make the mistake and you violate a policy, you've broken the law, you got to pay the piper, right? You're going to have a consequence. But we can also treat them like human beings, man. That's who we are first. Like, and get away from, we're just this robot that comes in, throws a badge on our chest, a gun and a vest, and we go out there and solve everyone's problems. We're not robots. We're humans. We have our own trauma. We brought shit into the career from our childhood, whatever it is. And we can do so much better, man. And I honestly think we can change the overall landscape of mental health and first responders if we just make a few minor steps. Now, a lot of it costs money. And I understand that it is never lost on me, because I've been a part of budget stuff with SWAT. I understand that everyone's fighting for a penny, but that's where leadership comes in, right? If you've stepped into that role to be a leader in your department, whatever that organization is in the first responder world, you've also stepped in to be that voice for your people to say, this is why I need this. It's okay. You mentioned Jocko. What's Jocko say? It's okay to admit you're wrong or we made mistakes. Get up in front of your city council or commissioners and say, if they say, well, Sheriff, how come you need all this extra money for mental health? Where's this coming from? This has never been a line item. Well, let me tell you about our culture.
Right.
Let me tell you about the history. We have failed. It's okay to say I've failed, right?
They double down.
They
They double down on nope, we're doing good,
Right.
because if they admit that there's been 2 or 3 suicides under their watch, and that's going to reflect poorly on their leadership,
Right.
instead of them trying to fix the damn problem.
Yeah. Yep. In 2023, I was sickened by this. All in one day, it was 1 retiree and 3 active at LASD. Los Angeles.
That's right.
4 suicides within a 24-hour period. I was so pissed at the headlines because whoever they put out, well, no, it was actually the sheriff. Sorry, sheriff, but I don't give a shit. I've said it before. Comes out and says, this puts a highlight. I guess we need to, however put it, like it's a new thing. We need to respond to mental health. And I know a bunch of people through what I do now with the LASD, and they're like, this shit's been going on forever. But because you had the big 4 in one day, now we're going to be like, oh, shit, maybe we have a problem. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You have failed. And this is, I'll say in my presentations, if that kind of shit's going on and you've turned your back, you have blood on your hands.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. Like, and that may hurt people's feelings. I honestly don't give a shit. That's the real stuff. We have to take a look as this profession, like, what have we done wrong?
No.
And you sit across from some old salty chief, they'll be like, oh, Travis, this is just the new bullshit with mental health and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I can sit here and I can picture faces in my mind. I can remember names, and I'm sure you can too, of the people that did their 2, 3 divorces,
Yep.
drinking too much. Their career started going sideways. Oh, now they're having another affair. Oh shit, they're calling in sick because they're drunk. Those people were dealing with shit and they didn't know how to come forward for help. We've had this shit all along. It's just our culture has been like, oh, that's just them,
Yep. The one thing, the big missing piece, personal opinion, it's that frontline supervisor.
Yes.
That's that very first person that's going to see them every single day. That's
Right.
that frontline supervisor that, for whatever reason, is scared or doesn't want to speak, or is just not a supervisor, not a leader.
Well, we have a lot of that, man. I mean, we do. Like, that's just, again, people that aren't in the profession, they hear this stuff, but there's a lot of people in supervisor positions. They are not leaders.
Agreed.
They are not willing, whether they chose to do it because, I guess it's just the time, or I need that
Money.
extra money, whatever it is. And we do have a failure in that. And when we talk about real culture change, another thing the IACP says, we have to have leadership from top down, and then the leadership up top needs to see it come from bottom back up. And that means your first line supervisors better be talking about mental health like you want it talked about. It needs to be talked about in briefings.
Yep.
It needs to be talked about at debriefs. It needs to be annual training and all this. And if I'm the chief, you better hope I'm seeing that stuff coming back up, because if not, you're violating policy and we're going to have a problem.
Not just some computer thing where you go click, 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 click,
Right.
click, 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 click.
Exactly.
Okay. I was blown away and impressed when Matt Thomas sat across from me on here and admitted to the world that he himself went through mental health counseling.
Yep.
It's like, that's fucking amazing.
Yep.
Like, that's a leader leading the way.
Yep. And Matt and I, we come from the same culture, and we've been a part of the ATOA and stuff. And the first time I heard about it from him was at the first SWAT conference.
Okay.
And I see him pop into my class. And I'm like, shit. I was honestly pretty nervous, because I'm like, this dude hasn't heard any of this about me. He comes up to me, what are we going? All going out to dinner, getting ready to go out to dinner. We're standing in the lobby of the hotel after that night. And he's like, I need you to know something. I'm like, what? He said, that's awesome. You talked about it. Let me tell you about me. And I'm like, Matt, like, you and I were on the board at ATOA together.
Right.
He's like, right, dude, we don't talk about this shit. He said, I was going through stuff, you're going through stuff, and neither of us know it because we don't talk about it. But he says, we're going to change that. And so I love what they're doing at Pinnell, man. Like, I know there's a new sheriff coming to town, all that stuff. It's going to hopefully be good. But those two guys
I'll
are doing
keep Ross in line. I can keep Ross in line.
Right on.
I will stand here and say that.
Good. Because
I'll give him the real scoop.
They've done some good stuff, man, and I'm super impressed.
Just kidding, Ross. Just kidding. Just kidding.
But no, it's all good, man. But yeah, Matt's he's a great advocate for what we're talking about.
I don't know if he's going to move on to greener pastures after this. I have no idea. But him being at the level that he's at, and the ability to be open and raw, that's like, and I said too, like, I put out that little video the other day. Every single time that I've ever gone onto my own social and spoken about mental health, it's usually because I saw a video of you, and I'm being serious, talking about mental health, and I was like, knowing your background and who you are, and again, I got a million Mesa friends, and they're like, Travis, like, yeah, like, when you were on scene, everybody knew everything was okay. You have that reputation. And it's like, to hear somebody of your background to discuss these things, it's like, oh, it's okay to talk. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have, feelings.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's huge. I know, so at Mesa, it's tradition. It probably is in a lot of the academies. You can tell me if it's different, but towards the end of the academy, they bring in officers that have been in shootings to talk to the class, what that looks like.
We did it in post-academy,
yeah.
Yes.
So what does it look like to fight through that? What does it look like for the mental stuff? How about we start also, because that's all good stuff, right? You better have the mindset, because today could be the day you get in your shooting. What if we start bringing people in the department that have worked through their trauma and have come out with post-traumatic growth, and they get up in front of the academies and they're saying, this is what I went through. Like a Matt Thomas, the Chiefs, a commander, a SWAT guy, a violent offender unit guy, and they get up in front of that recruit class and say, hey, look at me. Because you know how it is when the academy gets out, well, whatever, when they come in as an OIT officer in training, they're just like, eyes are bigger and shit. They don't know what's going on. But then they start watching. They start seeing who's influential. They start seeing like, oh, I want to be like that person. What if those people that have worked through their shit are in front of them in the academy and saying, hey, it's okay to not be okay. And my career is still moving forward. I'm still with this unit that you may want to be a part of, That's been one of the great things about, and again, this is not me patting me on my back, but I'm talking about Mesa and the spec ops. So gangs, all that stuff. There is so many people going forward for help now because of us starting to talk about it.
Good.
And those are the people that are still in these highly sought after positions. They come forward and they say, I went through it and it's okay. Yeah, I don't know why this call fucked me up, but it did. And that's all right. I went and I got help through a culturally competent therapist. I had some pretty emotional days.
Sure.
I worked with my family on it. But now I'm through it and I'm still moving forward. You're never going to forget it, but you're still moving forward, man. That's what we need to highlight in our organizations.
So you two have a unique relationship in the fact that, again, you were law enforcement. You're the spouse and you're law enforcement. Your issues and traumas, not to say that you have issues, that's not what I'm saying, but you've gone through the same sort of things and traumas and all that type of stuff. But what could you say as the spouse of someone who has come out openly about this type of stuff in regards to support? How can you work through as the spouse, again, male, female, doesn't matter, but the support side of the house, to see someone going through these things, and you have the law enforcement perspective, unfortunately, like I can't get the non-law enforcement perspective. So that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yes.
But what are your words of advice for someone who's dealing with somebody who's dealing with this stuff?
Right. I think a big factor in it is knowing the therapist too. I already knew Jen, but if I didn't, I would want to meet with her and just figure it out. Because Jen was really good. Because I met with her first. She started seeing Travis, and then even when I saw her still throughout work or whatever, she's like, "Don't fuck up my work, Emily." Like I'm setting up, especially when Travis at the beginning, when he was really deep in the dark hole. Like, here's these stipulations about drinking, about, we're going to do EMDR. He's going to be gassed. Don't ask him questions. Wait till he comes to you to talk about it. Because I never did any EMDR. So I was like, and I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? So I think getting educated with the therapist of what's going to be happening, what to expect from your spouse after they go through it, because he is gassed. He is like, I'm like, well, can you get home? Are you too tired to drive? Because I can drive you. But she's just like, don't ask questions about the session. Wait until he wants to talk about it. If he wants his, like, sometimes he's like, I just want to go outside, sit by the pool and play with the dog, or I want to go take a nap. It's just like, whatever you need, I got you. You tell me what you need, and I can make it happen. Like, are you hungry? Do you want food? Do you not want food? I think just being open of what to expect, because therapy was the big thing that saved his life. EMDR, like, it's magic. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
It's weird voodoo shit with your eyes bouncing back and forth and processing step by step slowly. It was multiple sessions. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to speak for you.
Right.
And every time it's like, how's he going to be when he comes out? Like, I don't know what point of this call you guys got to today, but I'm not going to ask. I'll wait for him to tell me. If he wants to tell me, if he doesn't, it's not my business. I just want him to get better. But I think because I know how important therapy was, knowing Jen, the therapist, or whoever it's going to be, was huge.
Okay.
And just having that relationship,
Yeah.
at least just for the expectations of, hey, Jen, you're seeing my husband. I don't know you, or you're not my therapist, but what should I expect as the spouse? Or what can I do to help him get his needs and get through this process?
That's, I think, extremely relevant to just understand, like, even just what you said, like, now is not the time to ask him questions or ask,
Right.
ask your spouse questions. Just let them be.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot of spouses would have, what's the word I'm looking for here, would not be cool with that. They want to know, how did it go? What,
Right.
you know, blah, 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 blah. You know,
Of
like
course,
how
yeah.
spouses
Like,
do
how
that.
can I help? Can I help you? And it's like, no, I'm not the helper right now. I'm just the support staff. Like, Jen's
cool way to
helping
look
you
at it.
and you're literally going through it. I'm just you tell me what you need and I'll. And there was hard because, of course, I'm like, what do you like? Because I'm like, I don't know what EMDR does. Like, what do you
Right.
do? What do you talk about? How does it go? Like, I need to just talk to Jen, not him, because he's the one putting the work in. But just being educated from the therapist of like what this is going to look like. And then I can like, okay, that makes sense. Now I know
Yeah.
what to expect.
You know what to expect.
Now I can do what I can accordingly.
Because I tell you, AJ, one of the things we do too with our organization, we do family events where
Okay.
we educate spouses, and we'll do it for children over the age of 16. It's appropriate content. Because I feel as a first responder community, we've let the families down. Like, it's a big celebration at the academy and all this stuff. It's all fun, pin on the badge. Oh, this is going to be a great career. We're going to make all this money. It's going to be good to go. And then a year later, the spouse or partner is coming back to like, what the hell happened to them?
Yeah.
They're not the person I knew a year ago. So, like, I'm talking education about what PTS is, PTSD, suicide prevention, all those things, and talk to them about it so they're educated. That's one thing Jen, like what she's explaining, is Jen needs to educate. It's a partnership. We're all in this together. It's not like Jen and Travis and Em, like, okay, good luck. Well, she's with me all the time. She's going to see these things that maybe aren't working, like what's going on with him, you know? Or like her knowing, like, just let him alone. Because I could come home and be like, don't talk to me. I'm just tired right now. She might, you know, as a spouse or, you know, partner, you might be like, what the fuck? What do you mean I can't talk to you? But then you hear from the therapist, like, this is why we're doing this. Like, he needs a little reset time. He just went through some pretty, you know, tough therapy. And this is what it looks like. Okay, now I know what's going on, you know, but we haven't done a great job of educating the families what comes with this. I laugh about all the recruiting videos. What is it, like air unit, canine, SWAT, gangs, whatever. You're doing exciting stuff. And like, that's our recruiting video. Well, how about we talk about, and this is what we provide for you and your family for mental health wellness, because we love that you have chosen this profession. There's going to be some really chaotic days. There's going to be days that you may even question, did we make the right decision? What is happening to us?
Absolutely.
But these are the services and support we promise we are going to provide you, because we want to help you be, number one, if our family's not healthy, everything starts going to shit at work, right?
That's the worst.
Yeah. So
That's
if
the
you're,
worst.
I'm going on shift and like, yep, I'm about ready to go through a divorce and like, okay, now I'll go solve everyone else's problems. I'm probably not in the great frame of mind. Not to say that divorce, even with the best help, that may happen. I'm saying if we treat this more like a partnership with the family, it could be much better off.
Yeah, no, we had one little half day
Yeah.
Right.
where some lieutenant who I'd never heard of or met before and never saw ever again came and talked about how tough it is on the family.
Yeah.
And you just got to support your husband. And it was always husband, because we didn't have any
Right.
females. It was all, you got to support your husband, and then that was it.
And you're like,
like-
what does that mean?
Right.
Like, what does that mean?
Great. Okay.
And then and the flip side that I think about though too is that how receptive would you have been at 22, 23 years old to this information? That's the question that I have, because I would not have wanted to
Yeah.
hear it at all.
Maybe it feels culturally acceptable.
Yeah, that, you know, you are not the first that would say that or that have asked me something like that. I think if it just becomes so, like, again, the recommendations are from day one of the academy, we're talking about this stuff. Then in the academy, we have something in the FTO. The FTOs are trained in this stuff. They're talking about, hey, we just went to this call. Let's talk about, you know, what this looks like. Hey, these are what things that I've experienced after a call like that. This one may not bother you. It may.
Yeah.
But if you see these things, let's talk about it. Then there's annual training. Then there's annual check-ins with a culturally competent therapist. That's another recommendation for every single department member.
Yeah.
Annual check-ins. And then throughout the entire career, this is just common conversations, right? It's not suck it up.
Right.
It's what you signed up for. It's like, hey, pretty shitty call. Jen always puts it this way. She says, it should be the expectation that our people are going to have a call that causes them significant difficulties versus the exception where we're like, what the fuck's wrong with them? Why are they having a hard time with that call?
Why did you just pulled a baby out of the car that's dead? What's wrong with you?
I was there. You know how many dead babies I've seen? Suck it up. And that's what we generally do in this profession versus like, no, we would expect that. Here, let's talk about it. And these are the resources.
It's the sort of thing where, again, going back to like a physical injury, you break your arm, you're going to have rehab afterwards.
Yep.
You break your brain,
Right.
there needs to be some fucking rehab that goes in, some thought that goes into it.
Yep.
And how many, again, just thinking back to, and again, everything, I'm just going back to my own personal experiences. Yeah. Not a single conversation with an FTO, with a supervisor, nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to be an FTO here, you're going to go through this extra training, identifying what PTS so you're able to at least talk about it. And we expect you on the little checklist that we go through. We discuss mental health and the services that we recommend when you are having difficulties with this call or this week or whatever it is. And that just then becomes commonplace, man. We can do it. It's just, again, it's just getting the wheel to go in our profession. It's like, it goes so damn slow. But my hope is if I can look back 10 years from now and be like, okay, we've made some significant changes. We'll never get it perfect, man. I'm not naive to that. I'm not going to say that we're going to stop every suicide and all that of our first responders, but I think we can significantly change the outlook and change the landscape.
Real quick story here, and I'm not going to name names. I went somewhere to get some coffee, and I met a person that's on the team with Mesa, and I saw their shirt, and I just had a real quick conversation with them. And I told them that I, advocate for mental health. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We had a conversation. This person immediately wanted to open up and talk to me.
Oh, wow.
And this was they were doing coffee with a cop.
Oh,
and they
yeah.
were serving
yeah.
me the coffee. And like, I'm like, I know the line's backing up.
Yeah.
But this person wanted to talk.
Good.
And it was
awesome.
like, and I exchanged phone numbers with them and all that
Heck
good
yeah.
stuff. But it's like, there's obviously been a cultural change.
Yeah.
This person wanted to talk and wanted to know more information and all this type of stuff. So it was like, that wouldn't have happened 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So that's good.
Like just from a very brief interaction with this person, it was like, cool. This is awesome to hear.
Very cool.
Yeah. And the only problem is that, my old department.
Yeah, I know. And it's ebbs and flows. Yeah. You get a different administration in and it doesn't become a priority. And there's a new fire to put out on this Monday morning, and what do we do? And this gets pushed on the back burner. But I mean, to me, I'd like it to be number one priority for all first responder organizations, if not that, at least top three, the mental health wellness and how, what we're doing. So, but they've got to take a hard look in the mirror, and it's okay to say, yeah, we've been trying this program. Like I often joke, like you see a department or something, we've got a quiet room with a massage chair. And that's our mental health. Great idea, because it's part of the whole, global plan of how we can help our people. But that's not the fix all for everything. Like we've got to have access to therapy, and it's got to be a bunch of things in conjunction to really solve the problem.
It's not a war that's gonna be won overnight.
Oh,
in
no,
any way,
not
shape,
at
or
all.
form.
Nope. But I will not give up. I can tell you that.
It's good. It's department by department and knocking on people's doors and just people hearing the story.
Absolutely.
And just being open and raw and exposed and just having the ability to talk about it.
Right. No, agreed 100%.
You guys are doing amazing things.
Oh, thanks, man.
Leave us with some words of advice. You guys have given me what? You've got almost 2 hours now.
Okay. Words of advice.
Suggestions, advice.
Yeah, number one, I don't care if you're first responder or whoever's listening to this, number one for the individual, like it's okay to not be okay. That is the core of everything I do. I now, work with organizations and all that, trying to change the culture as a whole. But my number one goal will always be speaking to the individual. And I don't care what your trauma is. Trauma is trauma. And
it is.
Get it squared away, because I will tell you it's not getting better. You can maybe shove it down and like get on top of it for a few months, but then, so I explain it like this. Imagine if you, your cup, that's the analogy I use all the time. Your cup is full. So you fill your coffee cup up in the morning. It's like, man, I got that too full. And I can walk very gently over to the table and I might not spill anything, but one little sidestep or one little bump and you got shit spilling over the side of it, right? That's the same thing with the shit that we deal with. The daily stresses, the work, all of it is one little, if you're at that point where I was for a lot of years, like one little bump and it sets you off, man. You're like in a rage, you're doing whatever. It's just, you're off your skis, you know, it's just not good. Just address it, man. It is, I will tell you, the most courageous thing you can do is coming forward. I've seen some cops do some amazing things, save lives, heroic things. The most heroic is when I see a cop that's able to come forward and say, yeah, I've got some issues. I've got some things I need to take care of. That's real courage. And that's leadership, to be quite honest with you. Whether you got stripes or bars on your collars or you got nothing, it's an informal leader, whatever it is. You come forward and show that other people, I'm not afraid to say that I had a problem with that call. That's leadership.
Would you agree that it's probably the hardest thing you've ever done?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Like, I am super, one reason I brought her here in Arizona, see family, but also like, I need you here because it's going to be the hardest event I ever did, because I still battle the demons of shame. And now I'm going to be sitting in front of some people I trained, some people I operated with in a large group setting, and they're going to hear everything, because most all of them have probably heard bits and pieces about what happened to Travis, but now they're going to hear the real dark and dirty stuff, all the things that I went through, and they're going to be like, what the fuck? And that's hard for me. So, but I'm on top of it. I'm going to do it. No problem. I will work through it, but it's, you still fight those demons, man. But it is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done.
I wish there was an ability to take that shame away from you and throw it in the fucking garbage can.
Yeah.
But it won't happen.
Yeah. I'm working through it. I still go to a therapist in Montana. So I still, and we're working through it. I understand where that comes from. It just comes from our culture. It comes from how I've seen people in the past that were treated when they say, man, that shooting really messed me up, and then they're demonized and they're like, not allowed to be on that unit anymore, whatever it is. So I still fight that.
My advice, coming from the standpoint of a spouse of a first responder that I could tell was going through some things. He talked about on the individual side of address, my cup's getting full, so let's address it. I'm going to say the same thing as his wife. Yes, I'm in law enforcement and I already knew a therapist that I wanted him to see, but I'm like, I'm addressing it. You need to see Jen. I can see your sleep is like shit, which I understand. We all work shift work. Right. My biggest thing, like he always talks about his anger. I'm like, I never really noticed that. My thing was, you can never relax. Like you are spun up to 10 all the time. And then, so I was like, all right, addressing it. You need to see Jen. You need to see Jen. I don't know how to fix this. I don't.
And she didn't give up.
And I didn't give up. And then once he started seeing Jen, have a plan. Okay. I couldn't imagine being in the dark as a spouse of like, if he was like, well, I'm going to go get therapy, I would be like, what does that mean? So like, talk to the therapist together, have a plan of what the hell is EMDR? Like, educate me, therapist, give me like landmarks, the things to look for, or a plan of like what to do, what not to do. So I can just be his support staff. Cause I couldn't imagine you going through all that therapy and either me being in the dark or like Jen said, don't fuck it up. Like don't fuck up your work because you're putting in good work. I don't want to, go backwards with that.
Right.
So I would just say address it when you see it, because it could be life and death. I mean, if it got to the worst point where he was like, this is it. My life sucks. My wife sucks. I'm going to commit suicide because we haven't talked about it. And I don't think talking about it's going to do that. Talking about it's going to fucking fix it and hopefully get the work put in to make it better.
Yeah.
I thank you guys.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
I don't know what else to say, but
no, it's our pleasure.
It's heavy and it's dark, but you talk about it in a way that's uplifting and forward progress and movement. And it's like, yeah, shit sucks, but let's move forward.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's get the fuck up off the floor and fix ourselves.
Agreed.
So
because it's possible. It's totally possible.
Absolutely. Where can you be reached? Contact information.
So Instagram is, I have something dedicated to this. It's my_.arena. And then my website is myarenallc.com. So you can find me there. I tell everyone I answer text messages, emails, Instagram messages. I never turn people away. That's what I actually consider it a privilege when someone reaches out. Maybe they've got questions. Maybe they're just looking for resources. I have a great network now. I mean, she sees me all the time. Like I was dealing with someone yesterday on Father's Day that was just in a dark place. Like I'm not turning my back. Like I'm going to help, I'm going to do everything I can to keep people on their feet and, have everyone be here tomorrow. So reach out if you need help.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate
Cool,
it, brother.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.